Good afternoon. 5:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Congressman Ralph Norman talks to us at 5:30. We'll chat with him about Congress's efforts right now on a mostly bipartisan basis to continue allowing the federal government to spy on American citizens. This is warrantless spying. Can it be stopped? We'll talk to the congressman about that. We'll chat with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. We are watching right now the President of the United States in the midst of, I guess, a 2+2, as we use one of these press conferences where they usually have members of the respective presses ask these questions. In fact, I don't know if it's officially that. Just forget that. My only point is there's a press conference right now. It's a joint press conference between Zelenskyy and Biden right now. And the American press is sitting there waiting for their opportunity to ask questions. You can hear the sound of it here.
Stands against tyranny and against oppression.
This is live.
America stands with the people of Ukraine. Thank you again for being here today, Mr. President, and thank you for everything Ukraine is doing to hold the line for liberty in the world. The floor is yours, Mr. President. Thank you so much.
And here's Zelenskyy.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, dear journalists. I'm glad to be here and personally thank you and tell you how Ukraine values what we've achieved together, defending life and freedom.
All right, so he's going to ask for more money now, and he met with defense contractors yesterday. He just met with Biden extensively, and the plan is to cough up $60 billion to Ukraine of unaccountable cash to them in the midst of our ongoing many crises here in the United States. Once they move to questions, we will keep our ear to that and perhaps bring you in on the exchanges. This would be an opportunity for somebody in the press to finally ask Joe to address the many scandals involving his family's finances. We'll see if anyone in there is even willing to ask a question on that subject. But first, I've got a report for you today from Axios. The author, Alex Thompson, the headline, Biden's Hunter Trigger. President feels guilty, sad, angry when son attacked. Biden feels guilty, sad, and angry when his son is attacked, says Axios. In private, no issue is more likely to anger or sadden President Biden than attacks on his son Hunter, according to people close to the president who have seen his moods shift when there's bad news about Hunter. For Biden, who privately has expressed guilt over Hunter's ongoing legal and political fights, the next year will be emotionally fraught as Hunter faces new criminal charges and will be at the center of the Republican-led impeachment inquiry. The 81-year-old president has suggested to close associates that if he hadn't run in 2020, Hunter wouldn't be facing criminal prosecutions or be the target of daily stories by conservative media, all while trying to stay sober and rebuild his life. So Hunter, the frame here is Hunter did nothing wrong. The only reason he's being prosecuted is because the conservative media told the Justice Department to do it. And now the Justice Department is hassling Hunter Biden because the conservatives have browbeaten him into submission. Does that make any sense to anyone? To anyone? You'd have to have Joe Biden's brain to think that this is how that this is all went down. No, it doesn't make any sense. What is Biden angry about? Biden is angry at the proximity of this conversation to his own enrichment. That's what he's angry about. Damn it, the Hunter stuff is catching up with me. That's what the anger would be about. Also, the anger is that he thought that he had this whole thing under control. The Justice Department was supposed to give a sweetheart deal to Hunter. In fact, David Weiss and Leslie Wolf, the assistant U.S. attorney in Delaware, they had written a sweetheart plea agreement that would forgive Joe Biden and Hunter Biden specifically of all sins ever committed, ever. He would never be prosecuted for anything that had happened in years past. And yet, it fell apart. It fell apart for two reasons. One, IRS whistleblowers come forward and they declare that there's an active cover-up going on within the United States federal government to protect the Bidens from the scrutiny that the rest of us would be entitled to as American citizens. One. Two, a judge who stands up, is it Mary Ellen Noreika? Was that her name? A judge who comes along and says, I just forget her name. I'm trying to rack my memory here. But basically, the judge comes up and is like, you can't give him the sweetheart deal. Wait a second. You're saying that he would be protected from all prosecution for any of this forever? And finally, the Justice Department's like, well, no, that's not exactly what we're saying. Although on paper, that's definitely what they were saying. That's definitely what they were saying. And so the whole thing fell apart. Those IRS whistleblowers were critical to this process. So this past week, the Justice Department tried to serve up a half measure. They said, well, okay, we'll prosecute Hunter for a number of tax violations. 9 charges, 3 felonies, 6 misdemeanor, including filing a false tax return. They said, oh, he owes all of these back taxes. He hasn't paid them. Millions of dollars that or if he has paid them, he paid them very late. He paid them very late. And he was given all this money by a guy called Kevin Morris, who deserves way more scrutiny in this process. It looks like this guy was paying for the Biden campaign to make this scandal go away. All the money started flowing in the beginning of 2020, which was during the presidential election. That's when Joe Biden's running for president. So Joe was convinced he had the whole thing under wraps. But he became unsustainable when these IRS whistleblowers came out and told everybody that the game was rigged, that the Justice Department wasn't actually investigating Hunter or the big guy, that they were burying efforts to investigate them, that when investigative steps were being taken, that the Biden team was being told in advance so that they could clean up the evidence of their wrongdoing. It is one of the most corrupt stories that our nation has ever encountered with an elected official. And so the way Axios is framing it today is, poor Joe. Joe gets angry when people are attacking his son. The ongoing criminal investigation into Hunter Biden has strained President Biden's relationship with his Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who appointed a special counsel in August to oversee the federal investigation into Hunter after the prosecutor requested that status. Only a few long-serving aides even feel free to discuss Hunter's situation with the president, and only at certain moments, knowing that it can prompt both fury and dejection. They're scared to talk to Biden, you see. They're scared to talk to him. They're worried that he might be enraged if you bring up his son. Brr. Hunter, 53, could face up to 17 years in prison if convicted of 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor charges, they say, including filing a false tax return. All right, so let me back away from this for a moment and jump into the press conference, because the press conference appears to be starting right now.
Asking questions. We're going to ask a total of each ask 2 questions. And I will ask the first question. I will recognize the first question asker.
I'll just get to
I'll
it.
ask a question, Joel, too. But Danny Kemp.
Who is that?
Thank you, Mr. President. For President Biden, Ukraine's counteroffensive has stalled in recent months. Congress is blocking aid, and Vladimir Putin appears ready to just wait things out. So what is the strategy for the US and Ukraine next year to try and turn this around?
This guy works for AFP,
a
wire
service. Do you say
service.
to Ukraine as a friend that it is perhaps time to start looking at peace talks? And for President Zelenskyy,
Reasonable question.
Welcome back to Washington. Can I ask you, did you hear what you wanted to hear from Congress and from President Biden? Or are you indeed more worried than when you got here? Thank you very much.
Well, let me answer the question first. Let's put this in perspective. Remember how far Ukraine has come. Russia's failed thus far in trying to erase Ukraine from the map and subsume it into Russia. Ukraine has taken back
He's not
more
answering
than
the question.
50% of its territory seized since February of 22, and has pushed back the Russian Navy so Ukraine can export grain and steel to the world through the Black Sea. And thanks to the incredible courage of the Ukrainian people and the bipartisan support from our Congress, but it's not just American support. There are more than 50 countries helping Ukraine with military, economic, and humanitarian assistance. 50. The burden sharing, the U.S. has put up $75 billion, and our allies and partners have put up $100 billion.
You know, Biden officials
More than 90% of our security
have been
assistance
telling
to Ukraine
the New York Times that the Ukrainian so-called counteroffensive has failed, and they're looking for a new strategy to make this thing work. So Biden's answer does not even square with what his administration is saying.
Ukraine and Ukraine to succeed. And the best way for that to do that is to pass the supplemental.
He didn't answer the question. How do we get to the end of this thing?
Yeah. Can I answer in Ukrainian, please?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to add to the words of Mr. President Biden about successes. I think that these were not easy successes. Nonetheless, they were quite serious. They were serious steps forward. Indeed, we gained victory on the sea. We destroyed ships of the Russian Federation. We threw the remnants of their fleet to Russian territorial waters. Yeah, they have something in the Black Sea, in the vicinity of our temporarily occupied Crimea, but we are going to proceed this activity. Our guys destroyed 20,000 of Wagner mercenaries. These are serious terrorists who were massing
Now remember,
everywhere
the question
on
to Zelensky was, are you pleased with the conversations you had in Washington, or are you more nervous that you won't have a blank check anymore?
This terroristic organization is not existing anymore. Yes, we had a lot of problems, but nonetheless we were able to do this. Moreover, Russia were not able to seize any part of our territory, any village, any town. I'm not talking about large cities, and we are going to proceed with this. It is good without saying that we have objective, we have clear plan, but if you allow me, I am not able to tell you in public on the details of 2024 operations.
The plan is a secret. I can't tell you what the details are, he says.
Surely I told what I wanted to. I feel and experience the support from President Biden administration, from senators, and we've been talking with the speaker. I got this signal. They were more than positive, but we know that we have to separate words and particular result. Therefore, we will count on particular result. Thank you.
So now, let's see.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sorry.
I think they're taking a Ukrainian question. This may be a 2+2. That's what I was saying before.
Inter, please.
Oh, thank you for taking my question. Dmitry Anopchenko, Ukrainian television news correspondent. Many Republican voices doubt the ability of Ukraine to win the war. Senator once recently even told that Ukraine need to cede some territories to stop fighting. Pane Volodymyr, to be very honest, have you even considered such a step to cede the territories to stop fighting? And Mr. Biden, could you please clarify the policy of your administration, the strategy of your administration on Ukraine? Is it about helping the country to defend itself or to win the war? Because it's obviously such a difference.
I will begin. Okay. Ваше запитання до мене, чи готові ми віддати території, я так розумію?
Your question is, if we are ready to give up our territories?
Слухайте, питання не тільки в наших словах
Okay.
чи в думках. Питання в тому,
All right, we're going to keep our ears on this. We'll see if there's any news that develops from it. Again, it may be that the entire press conference is only focused on questions related to Ukraine. This is a perfectly good opportunity, though, to ask Joe Biden legitimate questions about all of the ways his family's been enriched by his time in office. This is the chance. Biden has been avoiding the press assiduously. Coringe or whoever it is who's calling the shots there does not want him in front of reporters. This is about as controlled of an environment as they can get. They hand select these people to ask these questions. It sounds like only 2 American journalists will ask a question in this press conference. So we've already had one from AFP, a perfectly decent question. What's the end state here? How do you get to the end? What does that look like? Biden refused to answer it, and we await the second. Okay, keeping an ear to this press conference. The following question, the next question was from a reporter with Reuters. I think the guy's name is Trevor Honeycutt. And he asked whether or not Trump's reelection would be the end of an independent Ukraine. That's the question. And then subsequently asked about reports that the Israelis are now flooding the tunnels in Gaza that Hamas uses to commit its acts of terrorism. And Biden just wandered through the answer. There's not much to this on either question. Biden did indicate he just said that we need to stay in the fight for Ukraine, keep giving them money. And on the question of flooding the tunnels, which, man, that is a fascinating strategy, isn't it? That's a good strategy, where they pump all of this seawater into the tunnels. They say, fine, you're going to burrow underground. So they just find an entrance to one of these tunnels and they just start flooding them. Now, not all of the tunnels are connected. It's not just one source of water fills all of the tunnels. They have a couple places they have to go to do this. But it does render Hamas's strategy of hiding underground, at the very least, a lot more difficult when they're flooding these tunnels and they're pumping in unbelievable quantities of water hour after hour to make sure that they wash them out. Joe Biden said, he kind of half said something to the effect of, I don't want to give away intelligence or whatever, but he did say that he's concerned, he's not fully convinced that hostages are out of harm's way during this tunnel flooding exercise that's being done. But there's no question that Hamas is running its military operations out of these tunnels. So something has to be done. Something has to be done. And Israel is doing it there. So that's the update on the press conference, and that is the conclusion. It looks like they're winding their way down. There were no questions involving the biggest political scandal of our lives at all. Not a single one involving the Biden family's corruption. The presser has reached its conclusion. The two men are now walking away back into the White House. And, that's it. But coming up next, we've got Congressman Ralph Norman. We'll ask him a number of questions as Congress seems to be on a glide path to renewing the federal government's surveillance powers over you. Warrantless surveillance of the American public. Will it continue? Congressman Ralph Norman addresses it next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:34 here. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Congress is contemplating, well, actually, they're not even just contemplating, they're just smuggling in a reauthorization for the government to keep spying on the American people. Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, set to renew it as a part of a military funding bill, of course, because the military doesn't get funding unless they get to spy on America. That's the way it works. And we'll talk to Congressman Ralph Norman coming up here in a moment, but before we do, I should tell you that the same intelligence experts who put together that bogus letter accusing the Hunter Biden laptop of being Russian disinformation are also the people now calling to keep spying on the American people. They have another letter, these guys. They never stop with their letters. Tristan Justice over at the Federalist today. Intel experts who falsely discredited Hunter Biden laptop call to extend warrantless spying on Americans. The same intelligence experts who penned the infamous Hunter Biden laptop letter in October of 2020 are now calling on lawmakers to reauthorize the warrantless surveillance state through the National Defense Authorization Act. On Monday, 46 former national security officials signed a letter urging Capitol Hill to rubber stamp the reauthorization of Section 702. The same law was abused by deep state FBI agents to surveil members of Trump's campaign. The more than 36 former national security officials who signed the letter invoked the fentanyl crisis and overseas turmoil to make their case for unconstitutional surveillance. Quote, as you well know, our nation is under significant threat today with wars in Europe and the Middle East, a potential conflict with China in the Indo-Pacific, and the deadly flow of fentanyl across our southern border. In these circumstances, we cannot hamstring the U.S. intelligence community, either by failing to renew Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act or by limiting it in ways that would make it difficult for the government to protect Americans. Oh, yes, see, they want to protect you. They want to protect you by spying on you. That's what they want. 4 of the people who have signed this new letter also signed the letter in the fall of 2020 that sought to discredit Hunter Biden's laptop as nothing more than an instrument of Russian interference. Former Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, a well-documented liar. former deputy director for the National Security Agency, Richard Leggett, former Central Intelligence Agency acting director, Michael Morrell, and former CIA chief of staff, Jeremy Bash, each put their names on both the humiliating 2020 laptop letter and Monday's call to reauthorize the baseless surveillance of the American people. That's the plan. That's the plan. Now, Morrell, I should point out, and as the Federalist points out here, the former acting CIA director, the guy who signed both of these letters, he was the one who organized the Hunter Biden letter. He's the former director of the CIA. He put together the Hunter Biden letter, and he admitted to Congress that the reason he did that was because he, quote, wanted to give Joe Biden a talking point to use during the 2020 presidential debate against then-President Donald Trump. A talking point. A way to convince the American people that it wasn't real, when of course it was. So these people are professional liars. Their profession is lying. And they've done it at taxpayer expense for a very long time. And here they are again. Here they are again, acting as if they are the burning bush, the source of all truth and wisdom, and they're signing onto a letter, 4 of them at least, are signing onto this letter calling for the ongoing surveillance of the American people without their knowledge or consent. Warrantless surveillance of the American people. That's what they want. And so right now, the United States Congress is planning on passing this thing through what they call the National Defense Authorization Act. And they're insisting, they said, well, for decades, we've passed this military spending on time. We've done it every year on time. How can you get in the way of it now? And there are very few people who are even looking to get in the way of this. Very few. In fact, I think you can count them on maybe one, if we're being generous, 2 hands. Mike Lee and Rand Paul in the United States Senate, for sure. There are a couple of House Republicans who are objecting here, who are speaking up. People like Congressman Matt Rosendale, who we spoke with earlier. Matt Gaetz has spoken up against this. Yeah, there's lawmakers who are saying something, but too few who are saying anything about this. And we've seen what this looks like. Mike Lee wrote that hundreds of thousands of American citizens have been surveilled in this way. Hundreds of thousands of American citizens. That the FBI has violated your rights on a constant basis with a reckless abandon, with no barriers whatsoever to who they spy on and why. You had Christopher Wray just testifying before Congress in the past week, testifying before the United States Senate, challenged by Mike Lee about all of this. And he said, everything's fine. We fixed it all up. Don't you worry. Whatever mistakes were made in the past, they're no big deal. And Mike Lee said that's not good enough. So Lee and Paul, to their credit, are fighting back against this now. So that's the update on this story. And you've got it's one of these things. It's like, you know, why does it feel like unless we take Republicans and we take their faces and then we put it right in this stuff, unless we do that, then we're not going to see any change whatsoever. The Federalist points out that James Clapper, I confused Jake Tapper and James Clapper just now. James Clapper did an interview with New York Magazine relatively recently, and he defended signing that discredited Hunter Biden laptop letter. It was last fall that he did the interview. The letter's allegations of Russian interference were quickly debunked with rare on-the-record statements from the FBI, the Department of Justice, and the Department of National Intelligence, and the State Department, all before Election Day. Recall, of course, that Donald Trump was in charge of those agencies, and some of them were willing to tell the truth. Quote, Clapper was not pleased to be asked about the letter 2 years after its release, the magazine reported. Yeah, he thought that this was going to be a hit and run. He didn't think he'd be held accountable for it. He didn't know that the traffic cameras caught his face driving the car. Quote, what are you trying to get me to say? Clapper said to the paper, that I screwed up and I shouldn't have signed the letter? I'm not going to say that, he said. As far as I was concerned, we were waving the yellow flag. At the time, it was fishy to me, said Clapper. It had the characteristics of a Russian disinformation campaign. Bull crap. Bull. Clapper lied to the United States Senate about, what did he lie about? Spying on the American people. Not wittingly. Remember that? Lied about spying on the American people. And now this guy has the audacity to sign yet another letter saying, you know what we need to keep doing? Spying on the American people. Wittingly. So some concern about this. Mike Lee writing in that op-ed for The Blaze that the FBI has used this as a backdoor way to spy on the American people. The Brennan Center for Justice agrees with Mike Lee. They're calling the proposed measure by House Republicans the biggest, that is to keep this thing going and to expand its powers. Yes, some House Republicans are doing that. The biggest expansion in government surveillance since the Patriot Act. Are you serious? This is what Republicans are signing on for? The liberal think tank's false provisions that would expand corporate compliance with government surveillance programs without adequate safeguards to prevent abuse. Quote, despite its name, the Pfizer Reform and Reauthorization Act is not a reform bill. It is an anti-reform bill in disguise, reads a Brennan Center policy paper. Not only does it fail to rein in warrantless surveillance of Americans of Section 702, it would actually expand surveillance in critical respects, effectively rewarding the FBI for years of misconduct and thus encouraging even more flagrant abuse in the future. What has the FBI done to deserve all of these expansions of their power? Why are we even spending money on building a new FBI building? At what point in the FBI's recent history did you say, you know what, they deserve a nice Christmas gift? They worked hard this year. They respected everybody's rights. It's time to reward the FBI. Brand new buildings, brand new surveillance powers. Attaboy. Way to go, fellas. Excellent work this year. Let's keep doing it next year. That's insane. That's totally insane. And these Republicans in Congress, all of them who support this, deserve to catch hell for this. Democrats too, of course, but they're on the side of tyranny. All right, we were trying to connect with Congressman Ralph Norman. We were not successful. I believe we may have some phone issues. Is that what I'm being told? Yeah, we have a phone issue. So unfortunately we have a phone issue. So, who knows why? That it could be the FBI. Who knows at this point? But we'll try and reconnect with Congressman Norman the moment we get a chance. But on this issue of tyranny, let me move to that issue then. Our friend Victor Davis Hanson, I say our friend, I don't know him super well, but I've had a bunch of great conversations with him on this air, and I always appreciate them. He's got a piece this week about all of this Donald Trump is a dictator stuff that you see coming out, spilling out of the mouths of every member of the press and every one of these legacy left-wing media organs. And let me, just to kind of set the stage for you, Tom Elliott over at Grabian has put a supercut together today of the media warning over and over, if Donald Trump wins, that the whole world is going to collapse. They're doing the full Chicken Little routine on Trump, and here's what that sounds like.
What would a second Donald Trump term look like?
Well, he cannot be the next president, because if he is...
You can't imagine the things that he's going to do. Mexico, Canada. We can't go to Canada because eventually Canada will become annexed to America.
And shoot visitors to the White House. Yeah, that means he can shoot the First Lady.
We're going to see violence, the likes of which we didn't.
What is he even talking? What are they talking about? Man, we try and cover some of the craziness that goes on in these networks. I miss so much of it. It's not like I'm actually watching this on most days. Somebody said that he's going to shoot the First Lady. What is he even talking about?
Even see on January 6th.
Make it illegal to run against him, to throw his opponents in jail, to shut down the media.
He will make himself into the Fuhrer, and he will make everybody raise their hand and salute him.
Democrats right now, you know what Democrats are doing right now? All across the country, they've been trying to remove Donald Trump's name from ballots so that voters don't even have a choice. And in opposite land, this is what the dispatches sound like.
Martial law against the American people.
Terminate the Constitution.
Rewrite the Constitution.
Create mass internment camps.
They're imprisoning their political opponents. They have an entire gulag here in Washington, D.C., where they lock up people who supported Trump and not Biden. People who walked into the Capitol building, who have been treated in the worst possible ways by the United States federal government. They're doing it now against Trump himself. He's got 90-something charges against him from a variety of ridiculous Democrat prosecutors all across the country, and all dropped this year in the effort to meddle in the presidential election. to, again, dispatches from opposite world.
Throw everyone into Gitmo.
Might be sent to jail or their rights might be suppressed, especially minority groups in society.
You might have...
Yeah, like if you're a Christian or if you believe in protecting the unborn child. Yeah, you're a minority group being targeted by your government right now.
Any number of things happen to you and your family.
Every one of us, our freedom, our liberty, none of us is safe.
He's going to have people around him executing against an enemy's list.
Assassinate generals.
Ordering troops to attack American citizens.
Trump's very well-armed and extremist base.
Are you listening to this? This is what... No wonder the left is fully radical. No wonder, because their heads are being constantly. It's like a pipeline. They're being waterboarded into submission by this.
We'll try to kill people. He's going to basically burn the house down.
He will unravel the institutions of our democracy.
Draw similarities between Mussolini and Hitler.
Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini.
Makes Donald Trump even more.
Wait, so what party and what candidate is actually conducting what Mussolini defined as fascism, where you merge the government with corporate power? Who's doing that? Is that Trump? Is that Trump? He's merging the feds with corporate power. I believe that would be Biden.
More dangerous.
Wants to take away your vote. Senate and the House are immediately going to be paralyzed. People will begin in their minds to censor themselves. They might say, well, maybe I shouldn't say this.
Wait, self-censorship because of Trump? Are you guys familiar with the DEI regimes, or what do they refer to it in corporate America? ESG, environment, social governance, like straight up HR departments forcing everyone not to express a true thought about any subject anywhere. Oh, don't be careful of your microaggressions. Who is doing that? The American left, of course. Anyway, that supercut goes on forever, and it's fantastic. It's really well done by Tom Elliott. But Victor Davis Hanson is pointing out that this is a routine affair, of course, for the left. He says it's Trump will destroy democracy season again, and predictably the left has gone hysterical after experiencing a trifecta of frightening 2024 news. One, current polls in the primaries and in a general election for now show that Trump would win. Meanwhile, Joe Biden's popularity dives below 40%. His policies on the economy, abroad, at the border, concerning crime, and about energy, they poll even more feebly. Never has an American president utterly and deliberately destroyed immigration law for the sole purpose of inviting in millions of illegal aliens to establish political constituencies supportive of agendas that otherwise have scant public support. Two, unequivocal evidence is mounting that the Bidens are one of the most corrupt political families in American presidential history. Hunter, the Leona Helmsley of our times, is now indicted for massive tax evasion, despite his earlier government-aided efforts of running out the statute of limitations on the full array of his crimes. When asked about his grifting, Biden angrily denies the undeniable. He can only become animated these days. When asked to square his denials about knowing what Hunter was up to with a multitude of facts and data to the contrary, and so in exasperation he shouts, lies, lies, and lies. There is now conclusive proof that Biden himself lied repeatedly when he swore that he knew nothing about his wayward son Hunter's grifting business. He used several aliases to communicate directly with his son's grifting and quid pro quo partners. Canceled checks show the president was paid substantial sums by family members after they received money from foreign governments for nothing other than being related to the future president. The payoffs were hidden by loan repayment lies. No one expects ever to find any such evidence that there were formal loan documents or agreements between Biden and his family. VDH continues in a characteristically fantastic column this week, but points out all of the ways in which it is actually Biden and the left who have become downright tyrannical with the levers of power in the federal government. It is not Trump. It is not Trump. It is once again. You know, it's amazing. Apparently, Metro is concerned that they have a budget cut in the hundreds of millions of dollars, or a budget that's shortfall in the hundreds of millions of dollars right now. And so they're floating that they may have to shut down 10 metro stations, 67 bus lines, and lay off 2,000 people if they don't get their money. Isn't it amazing? They force you out of your car to get you into public transportation. They can't even run it the right way. Maybe this is why they're forcing you out of your car. We need to force more people to give us money. And then when those people get there, what do? They jump the turnstiles. The nation's capital. Everything's going swimmingly. Oh, my goodness. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next right here on the legendary WMAL.